Hello and welcome to The Recipe, brought to you by Filippo Berio. I'm your host, Theo Randall, chef patron at Theo Randall Cucina Italiana. Today I'm joined by a man who is arguably the architect of the modern British recipe. He has overseen thousands of recipe tests and collaborated with every major celebrity chef in the country, earning him the title of Dude from the Good Food. Please welcome Barney Desmazery. Barney, it's great to have you here. This show is all about recipes that have meaning, recipes that tell a story. What are you going to cook for us today?
So I'm cooking a dish which is a duck Parmentier, or I suppose it's a duck cottage pie.
Duck cottage pie?
Duck cottage pie.
And so how are you cooking the duck cottage pie? It's a bit
so if there was a food hill that I'd die on, it's that confit duck, I think, would be my desert island dish. Death row supper. I think death row supper is a bit
morbid.
A bit morbid. So I'm going to go with desert island dish, and I don't think you can beat a crisp leg of confit of duck with some form of potatoes. So it's like me, it's a bit franglais or franglish or whatever you want to say, because the concept of a mashed top pie, I think, is English, even though it is a very French dish. So I'm using tinned confit of duck, which used to be quite hard to find, but with things being able to be ordered on the internet, it can be on your doorstep within a day. And we're going to shred that down, and I'm cooking that with a classic mirepoix. I'm using some leek, some carrot, and some shallot. We've got a bit of thyme, some bay, and some garlic in there, and then we're putting some parsley through it at the end. Then that's got some mash over the top, and then because nothing wants to go to waste, and
crispy duck skin.
I think it's truly the best bit about
absolutely.
it. We're going to bake that with the Parmentier or with the pie.
So you got French heritage.
I've got French heritage. My mum was French. Dad's English. Dad's London. Mum's Paris.
And this. I mean, duck. I think of Gascony. I mean, is this somewhere where you spent time?
So I did a stage in the southwest of France, in a little village called Les Aisies de Taillac, which is near Sarlat or Périgord, or not too far.
Where the truffles come from.
Where the truffles come from, exactly. Not too far from Bordeaux. And I had a brilliant time there. I think a lot of people, when they talk about being trained in France, they talk about sort of these bully boy chefs and being shouted at.
Yeah.
I had the absolute best time. The chef I had was like, he managed the kitchen like an orchestra. He never raised his voice. I was there for 5 months. He never raised his voice once. Half the kitchen was outside. We're overlooking these rolling hills of the Dordogne. Things that people really, at the moment, sort of make a big fuss about. They just did naturally because they were trying to save money, so they'd forage anyway. I was there for the cep season, for the porcini season, so you could earn a bit of extra money by going mushroom hunting.
Nice.
We were picking purslane from the cracks in the wall, and that was going on the menu. And he had an allotment.
Yeah.
And a lot of the vegetables came from the allotment because it was just a cheaper thing. It was cheaper for him to hire a gardener and to grow the vegetables than it was. So you got this boy from London.
Spoke French, because that was probably, I mean, if you didn't speak French, it would have been almost impossible.
Yeah, but I spoke very polite French because I only used to go to France to see my grandparents. So I spoke the sort of French that you speak to with your grandparents.
Yeah. But they love that. They must. He's so polite. I'm going to teach him everything I can.
So I spoke French. I was there, and all of a sudden, a lot of things started to make a lot more sense. There was a connection. The word terroir. I realised some food has a sense of place.
Yes.
And I really got that from.
Sounds like it. I mean, we had like porcini. You got mushrooms. I mean, amazing
truffles, as you said.
Yeah. Purslane.
Goose, duck, purslane.
So what age were you when you had that amazing experience?
I was 20.
Okay.
Yeah, 19, 20.
So it's the start of your culinary career, because you've had a long career of cooking and food. Yeah. I mean, Good Food website is one of my favourite websites for food. I mean, it is absolutely brilliant, and I've known you for a very long time, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you on here today. But just the amount of work and effort you put into the recipes is nice to see. But what's really nice to see is the fact that you've got your own new cookbook.
One dish.
Your first book. Yes. I mean, it's extraordinary. This is your first book, considering you've written how many thousands of recipes?
I can't even. Thousands upon thousands. Yeah. But I was the Bernie Taupin to Good Food's Elton John, and finally I'm sticking my head above the parapet. And this dish is also, so it's one dish 4 ways.
Yeah.
I've taken what I think are 25 very popular dishes in the UK and given each one a seasonal spin to a certain extent. There's 4 variations and moving with the seasons, and one of the ones I've done is cottage pie. So within the book, you'll find a classic cottage pie, which I've done a bit like they do in the Ivy, jug of gravy, because I will talk about the structure of a cottage pie later.
Sure.
I've done a vegetarian version with root vegetables for winter, and then I've done like a keema spiced one for spring, so new potatoes on top cooked with a bit of coconut milk, and then this version, which is my autumnal version.
So you take one dish and then you basically split it into 4 different ways of doing it.
Yeah.
So that's including pastas. Is it any specific country that you're inspired by, or is it a bit of everything?
The food that I eat is very European. So yeah, my dad's English, mum was French, grew up in central London. And
you grew up in Notting Hill.
I grew up in Notting Hill. What's
the real Notting Hill.
Yeah, I grew up in
Notting Hill now.
Exactly. I grew up in Notting Hill in the 70s.
I remember. I know that because I remember you coming to the River Cafe.
Yes.
When I was at the River Cafe, and there was Jamie there.
Yeah.
And you had gone to college with Jamie.
Yes,
at
I had.
Westminster College.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it, and we were in the kitchen, and you were saying, this Notting Hill is not what Notting Hill used to be like.
I remember. I've got fond memories of them as well. I remember you filleting a salmon, and you gave me a piece of. It must have been spring because it was the first salmon that had come in. Wild salmon, yeah.
God,
and you gave me a piece of meat that was very close to the bone. It was because you'd fillet it. It was just an offcut, and you said it tastes like cucumber, and that stayed with me forever because it really did. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, and you said it tasted cucumber.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You've got a great memory.
Yeah, I've got a very, very good memory. So yes, it's one dish, 4 ways, seasonal ways. I mean, the easiest way of sort of, I suppose, of explaining it is like a risotto. You have 4 seasonal variations. When I first had the idea for the book, it was much more of a textbook.
Yeah.
But like, learn to make this, and here are 4 ways to do it. But the publishers were really, they crafted it, I think, into a much friendlier book.
That's the good thing about publisher. A publisher will craft it into the way that's going to sell.
Yeah.
And if you sell the book, then you'll do another one.
I hope so. But yeah, and I'm very proud of what it's become. I mean, the working title was One Dish, 4 Seasons, which is a bit of a Valdi, but we've called it One Dish, 4 Ways, and classic ways of seasonally reimagining the dish. All my years on good food, there's parts to this recipe which I think sort of really, when people think you just pluck recipes out the air, and you don't. You have this long list of reasons to make a recipe. You have someone in mind. Like you're not going to suggest a beef Wellington for a student Wednesday night meal, and you're not going to say that a quick noodle dish is good for a posh dinner party. So you have all these things in mind, but you also try and make. I think good food recipes, and the reason why good food's been so successful is they work a bit harder. Because there's people like me thinking about, can it be made ahead? Is there a shortcut? How easy can we make this for someone without it losing its integrity? So I think confit of duck from a tin is possibly the bougiest, but one of the best sort of tin products there is.
It's a great product because you don't have to spend hours making the confit.
Exactly, and the ducks that they use are a bit larger than the ducks we get in the UK. So you can make your own confit with a Gressingham duck, but actually they're like it's a fattier duck. So I like the convenience of that. I also quite like that there's something about a familiarity of putting something on a table that people know and love.
Slow cooked duck is everyone's favorite.
Exactly, and they also love they love cottage pies. I mean, we've been doing this for a really long time, right? And trends have come and gone, but ultimately people still want these comfort food classics.
Barney, you're making me hungry. Shall we start cooking?
Yes, let's do that.
Right, Barney, so what should we do?
So, can you finally chop a carrot?
Yeah.
I'm going to chop some shallots, and then we're going to get some duck fat in the pan.
So we're going to cook a kind of sofrito, are we?
Yeah, well, in French, a mirepoix.
A mirepoix.
Yeah, mirepoix. So it's the start of everything, isn't it?
It just gives so much flavour to a dish.
Exactly. I mean, where would you stand with this? Would you put the carrot in first because the carrot takes longer to cook, or would you put all of them in together?
I would generally always put them all in together, so they will just cook evenly. So this dish came from the inspiration cooking this from Gascony, I suppose. I mean, did you do a lot of like duck confit there? Was that?
So the restaurant I worked in, the hotel restaurant I worked in, was quite fancy, and it was the early 90s, and he did his own versions of things like cassoulet and confit duck, and there was a lot of whether we don't really agree with eating it now, but there was a lot of foie gras there because of where it was.
Well, there was lots of ducks.
There was a lot of ducks.
Yeah.
But the thing that I loved about it was you used to get, you do 5 days splits. First, the staff food was incredible. Absolutely.
Sounds like heaven.
I mean, absolutely.
I want to go to this place. Is it still around?
It is, but the chef he sold it on to someone else who's trying to do very pernickety. Like when they get it wrong, feathered, really old school feathered sauces.
But he was cooking pure regional Gascony food from Gascony.
He was cooking, food from the Dordogne.
Yeah.
On a Michelin level, but it was all food of the area.
Yeah. And foraged and
foraged, and he relied on ceps, he relied on foragers.
Yeah.
He relied on all these things. But on your days off, there was like the equivalent of your agriturismos, which were the farms, which would do lunches, and you'd go and for next to nothing, you'd have a shared table and they'd just put this cassoulet down.
Wow.
Or they'd put these enormous legs of confit of goose down, and just the biggest pile of potatoes that have been fried with ceps and porcini and garlic, or you'd go to a local cafe, ceps, porcini, penny buns. They were a big deal there. And I was there for the right season, and a cafe would do a cep omelette.
So it sounds to me it's been a big influence on you, that was your kind of first real kitchen experience, but it must have helped you in your career because it kind of gave you that sense of structure as far as writing recipes that were seasonal and made sense.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier on about cooking the right dish for the right person. So it gave you that sort of grounding. So it sounds like a very good training.
Yeah, it was a really good training. But there were some things like you remember the first time you tried something. I came from London. The food that I ate was very European. My dad was a big Elizabeth David fan. My mum was French. He tried to impress her by cooking his way through through French provincial cooking. I remember I must have been about 19, 20, and trying lemongrass for the first time. I think I was a little bit younger. Yeah. But trying lemongrass for the first time, it's like discovering a new colour. You're like, what? Yeah. How did you even do that? Like, where did you get that from? What sort of wizardry is that? That sort of happened. Very different because lemongrass is fresh and fragrant. But I remember eating confit duck, and I was like, this is just incredible. And there was the chef, wasn't there? Pierre Koppmann, who's still around. He had a restaurant. His book, Memories of Gascony, was a big deal to me. But in terms of writing recipes, it's a craft. It's just like cooking. So I knew how to cook. I've been at Good Food for a long time. It is very much about knowing your audience, knowing what you're doing, and thinking about who. I can't. When someone says to you, "Can you write a recipe?" and you don't have quite a tight brief, I find it quite a hard thing to do.
Yeah, of course.
You need to know how much do you want us to spend. Are there any dietary requirements? How old is that person? Yeah. And then that's how you build the recipe. And then that recipe is going to be functional. It's going to work for someone. And then you apply your skills. And
did that help with when you're writing the book? You thought about all these aspects of cooking and who you were cooking for.
With the book I did, but the book was a bit, the book was quite indulgent. So I think there are a lot of...
There's no cost restraints on the book.
The book's all about comfort eating, and it's about dishes people love and doing them a new way. A lot of food can be very functional, and there's a reason for it. We're either trying to talk about, you're trying to cover something historically, or they're talking about a type of cuisine or a type of dietary requirement. And we need books for all of these things. Occasionally, let's just enjoy ourselves.
You have a book.
Food's about pleasure, and there's nothing in there that's expensive. But I might have been, I've been realistic with how much cream, butter, and cheese I would use at home.
Yeah. You've been honest.
I've been honest. And
I think a lot of recipe books are never honest.
The food stylist on it, she nicknamed me Henry VIII because the pie in there that's got eggs running through it, which is a delicious thing. She nicknamed me Henry VIII because
So this is cooking nicely. So we're just going to soften this down.
Yes. So I need to do quite a messy job, but I need to shred the meat of the duck.
So you can take the skin off. Frugal cooking, do you fry the skin?
So we're going to bake the skin with the. Also, the skin's the best bit. We're going to bake the skin with the pie. So when the pie cooks, the skin gets baked, and also you've got a shelf for the oven free, so why not use it?
Exactly, use it. So I'm a big fan of Good Food website.
Yes.
Because the recipes are always, it's a kind of you know it's going to work.
Yeah.
How much testing do you do? Because they're so beautifully written in the sense of simplicity.
Thank you.
But the fact is they always work. They always come out, even if it's like a pancake recipe or something really simple.
Yeah.
But it is the real go-to for, I think, a lot of cooks.
So
what's the process?
The process is, and this is where people get confused. And I think there's a difference between development and testing.
Yeah.
So development is you developing a recipe. So it's where you kind of cook it from scratch. You have an idea in your head. Different people do it different ways. Some people don't have a page next to them. They just cook a recipe and write things down as they do it. I always start with the bones of a recipe and add the bits that are missing.
Yeah.
That recipe then gets written. So that recipe's been developed. It then gets tested. And one thing Good Food have always sworn by, which some other food media brands don't do, is the food that you see in the photograph is the recipe that you have in front of you.
Okay.
So we insist that even though it's a professional food stylist, home economist that's doing the food, that the recipe is the same. Any tweaks that they make, they have to tell us.
Okay.
Any changes they make, they have to tell us, and that has to go into the recipe. So by the time it's gone to the photo shoot, that's 3 or 4 times that it's been cooked.
And the whole Good Food channel is expanding now. I mean,
yes.
you're in lots of shows. You're at Birmingham NEC.
I mean, Birmingham NEC has been going for nearly as long as the magazine. But yeah, we've got our website, we've got our app. We've gone from being just a print publication to being a big multimedia food brand.
So do you think over the last, you've been involved with Good Food for a long time. Do you think Britain's palate has changed? Do you think we've become more adventurous in our recipes?
Our palate has changed slightly. We're becoming a lot more aware of what we eat and what it does to us and where it comes from. The variety of food that's available to us. When I started, Thai food was very exotic.
Yeah.
I think when I first started cooking, if you'd have told me there would be sushi in petrol stations, I would have been like, what's going on? So
that's not necessarily a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing. But in terms of breadth of food that's available and what people's choice is definitely a lot broader. But in terms of the recipes that still hit, because there's a difference between a print publication and a website. And I think people come to print, they go to a cookbook or to a magazine for inspiration.
Yeah.
They pick it up, it's a snapshot of the season, and they go to a website because they want to cook something specific.
Right.
So when they come to us on the website, even though there's a lot of inspiration there, and they might look at the front page, a lot of the time they want to either cook a curry or cook a cottage pie.
The classics.
The classics.
Yeah.
The 25 dishes that people want to make. Carbonara. Yeah. Learn how to make a risotto. Learn how to poach an egg. The things that really hit on the website are your poaching eggs, Yorkshire puddings, recipes people don't necessarily know how to make.
But you must have seen over the years, you write a recipe,
yes,
and you put it on, and it's like, let's say, it's shepherd's pie, or maybe it's a carbonara.
Yeah.
But do you feel that once people have cooked that, and they've done a good job, they're then thinking, you know what, I'm going to try something else. I'm going to be a little bit more adventurous.
Yeah, definitely. And so the original idea for the book was exactly that. It was learn to make a couple of things, like learn to make a basic risotto, and you've got infinite dishes.
Yeah.
Learn to make carbonara.
Learn how to cook pasta. Learn how to cook the rice.
Exactly, which is something,
it's not easy.
With the king of pasta, what you've taught me about cooking pasta has changed everything. So I think it's people's, we've moved on from people just wanting spaghetti bolognese with a ladle full of sauce on top of some dry pasta.
So the answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
I think we have become...
I'm going to go with some chicken stock.
Yeah, go. What about trends? Do you feel that the trends are becoming... They take over. All of a sudden, after lockdown, everyone was cooking, or during lockdown, everyone was trying to eat really healthy food, cooking, vegan dishes. And then it sort of seems to have changed a lot. We're going back to kind of more sort of rustic dishes like this.
Yeah. So I think things come and go, and I do think that, as I said, people are more aware of what they're eating. And I think if a food trend is good, then it hangs around. And if it's convenient, it hangs around. It becomes part of all of a sudden, it becomes, part of the food that we cook. There's been some awful food trends, haven't there?
Yeah,
there've been some absolutely...
Well, name some really bad ones.
when Instagram first started, all the freak food, so the things that you wouldn't actually eat, they were just there.
Like those huge
burgers, huge burgers. You have to dislocate the jaw.
25 kilos of cheese in them.
Freak shakes that would be incredibly unhealthy. Spiralising, I was never behind.
Oh, never been a fan.
Never a fan of that. Food trends have come and gone, but what people actually want to eat, I'm sure you find that with your restaurants.
Yeah.
It sort of remains the same. What gives you that moment where you're thinking to yourself, actually, that reminds me of something? If I pick mint, it takes me back to somewhere, and it reminds me of something. And food's all, the variety's all well and good, but when food does that to you, that's when the magic happens.
So one thing that I've noticed, certainly during lockdown, you were one of the leading forces in cooking sourdough.
Yes.
I used to look at your bread and just be absolutely blown away by it.
Overnight expert, yeah.
You really were an overnight expert. To the point, though, you make it on a regular basis.
Yeah, I still do.
And we all say bread's easy to make, but it does require patience and skill.
Yeah.
What would your tips be for someone who's just started out? Being a sourdough expert, what would you do? So someone wants to start from scratch.
Don't start with sourdough.
Okay.
So don't start with sourdough. Okay. Start by making a basic bread.
Yeah, like what?
A very simple bread, nothing
focaccia?
More. You can make a focaccia, but I'd say just start by making a basic loaf. Most basic bread recipes have too little water in them.
Okay.
So up the hydration. So you're talking about 500 grams of flour. About 300 grams of water, maybe a little bit more, a sachet of yeast, and that's all you need, 10 grams of salt, and you're going to have your really, really lovely basic bread dough. Do not rush it. Once you've proved it, put that dough. It doesn't matter if it's sourdough or if it's just the most basic bread dough, the flavour develops over time. Okay. And it becomes more digestible over time. Now, sourdough, all it is a different type of yeast that reacts differently. It's still yeast. Yeast is yeast. And I think normal yeast gets a bit of a bad... People think that they're cheating if they, all of a sudden they've got this. There's absolutely nothing wrong with using standard fast-action yeast.
Dried yeast.
Dried yeast, yeah. Dried yeast that you can just add straight... But if you want your flavour to develop, just put that bread in the fridge overnight once it's proved. And same with pizza dough.
So like a 24-hour proof.
24-hour proof, 48 hours. It's the same with pizza dough. And all of a sudden, you will just find the flavour comes alive. And I think that's the same with, it doesn't matter if you're making hot cross buns, or you're making a basic bread dough, or you're making sourdough, that time will equal flavour. And it also equals more digestibility.
What do you feel about fresh yeast? I know it's quite hard to get hold of because,
I don't. So I think it's one of those things that chefs have always used and bakers have always used. I'm yet to find someone tell me to explain to me why they use fresh over dried.
I don't know. We use fresh yeast in the restaurant. We make
but you can get it, yeah.
And
is it better flavour?
I don't know. I've used dried yeast and fresh yeast. It just... I don't know. It's just. I guess it's something you get used to using, and I think maybe it just becomes right. No, it's got to be fresh yeast. But
So there's if you remember a guy called Nathan Meerhold, very crazy sort of food scientist who did loads of tests, and it's like there's absolutely no difference. One's fresh, one's dried. If you want to convert one to the other, it's double fresh to dried,
exactly,
or half dried, half dried from fresh. But he was like, yeast is yeast.
Wow.
Right, so I'm going to go, it's parsley.
So chopped parsley.
Love
a bit of flat leaf parsley.
Yeah.
So duck, so that's all going nicely. So
that's our mixture.
So
you can see there's no need to thicken that, there's no need for flour. The fat that's come off the duck has made it into a lovely...
Smell the duck, it's beautiful.
Duck ragu. The duck itself is quite salty, so there's no need to salt that.
Yeah, because it's been... So what's the process of confit duck?
So confit in French means to preserve, which is where you get the French word confiture.
Okay.
And confit duck confit duck is preserved duck. So before there were fridges, they'd had to preserve the duck, and it's to slowly cook it in its own fat.
And that just holds all the flavour.
Holds it. You keep that in a jar. It just locks it all in. You keep that in a jar. That will keep for years.
That duck fat when you poured it in the pan. The whole room just starts smelling roasted duck. It's fantastic. So foraging is something that you're a big fan of. Obviously, in your time working in France, and I think one of the nicest things to do is finding porcini mushrooms or any kind of wild mushrooms.
So lovely, isn't it?
So do you still do it?
I do. So once a year, I go to Wales with a good friend of my best chef friend, a guy called Jonathan Jones, who owns the Anchor and Hope.
Of course,
really good friend of mine, and we spend
great restaurant pub. Is
fantastic. He had Great Queen Street for a while. Really, really amazing.
Brilliant cooking.
And we take 5 days to a week every year.
Yeah.
And some days we get the weeks right, and some days we're a little bit early or a little bit too late. And we go looking for mushrooms. This is the dish that I actually take with me from London, because it's completely prepared ahead. I make this dish up, and I take it from London, unbaked. And if we get some porcini, then we're really lucky because we get to eat a big pile of porcini with it. If we don't, then we still got a beautiful dish to have. We were very good. We got, I don't know what they are in Italian, but they're pied de mouton in French, or hedgehogs in. In this year was really good for those, but we were a couple of weeks too late for the porcini. We saw them, but they'd gone past their best. So I think things are getting a bit earlier with global warming.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah. So earlier off screen we were talking about our mothers. My mother passed away when I was younger, when I was 18, and the two people I sort of magnetised, as you do, towards, because I didn't have a mother anymore. Two older women of my mother's age. One was a Parisian aunt.
Yeah.
Who. This is exactly the sort of food that she'd serve me. She'd do haché Parmentier is basically it's minced lamb. It's a French version of a cottage pie. And then who became my future mother-in-law was a lady who had a house in Wales. Mm-hmm. And at the time she was going out with a poacher, essentially. This kind of very sort of Danny,
romantic.
Yeah. Very, very sort of Danny champion of the world type guy.
Great book.
So I was 19. This actually was before France. I was 19. I used to go to Wales, again, city kid, and he'd take me fishing, shooting, picking wild garlic, wild watercress, which I know you have to be careful about eating. But yeah, and he'd show me all these things, and it's sort of, people have an influence on you and what you do, and yeah, he was a big influence on me.
And what sort of things would he poach? I mean, animal-wise.
So he shot mallard, but all the ducks, pigeon.
Could he cook?
No, he couldn't. So he'd get these absolutely beautiful birds. A small mallard, he'd put it in an oven at about 140, and literally cook
warm it up.
He'd cook it for about 3 hours. He wasn't happy unless it had the texture of a rubber ball. That to him was perfect. But he did so with beautiful potatoes from his garden.
Okay.
And then when he wasn't shooting, he was fishing. And this is going back a few years when actually there was a lot more wild salmon, or what they call in Wales suin, in the sea. And he used to give me suin to go back to the restaurant I was working in. And my mother-in-law would get credit. So I was working at the Brackenbury.
Oh, lovely, Brackenbury, of course, yeah.
So I was working at the Brackenbury with Adam, and then I'd turn up with a bag of wild garlic and a big wild salmon, and my mother-in-law would get credit.
That's just outrageous.
Yeah.
Any butter going in there?
Yeah, butter and cheese.
Wouldn't be French unless it was butter.
Not quite the Robuchon 50-50.
Oh, God, yeah. So what was... that must have been one of the richest potato dishes ever.
Have you eaten that?
I have, actually.
It's good, though, isn't it?
It is incredible.
Yeah.
And what cheese you got there?
I've got some Gruyere.
Lovely.
Yeah, that's going to go in as well.
Amazing.
And this is the thing I think. So sometimes I think about you showed me this when we did the lasagna with you, with the step by step.
Oh yes.
Sometimes it's not about the ingredients; it's about how you structure a dish.
Exactly.
And that's what perfects it. And I think the beauty of this, what I'm about to do next, is sort of how you structure something. So if I was doing this at home, this would go in the fridge. You get this layer of fat over the top. The fat would solidify, and that would separate the two layers. So you get this natural place to put the mash on top. But whenever people top a pie with mash, the first thing they do is get a spoonful, put it straight in the middle.
And it just pushes the things up the sides.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you start from the outsides, work your way in.
So you have a perfect layer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you work your way in, and that way you're pushing the filling into the middle, and everything's contained.
I mean, you've worked with so many chefs. I mean, Paul Ainsworth, Tom Kerridge, lots of great names.
Gordon Ramsay,
of course. You've just worked with everyone. I mean, and so
Theo Randall.
But so, what's that been like? I mean,
it's been good.
You must have enjoyed having that contact with people and calling them up and
I love that. I mean,
become friends.
Yeah, well, turning what they do into what people now call content. Be it video, be it stills on a page with a recipe that you've worked on with them. It's just a joy. It feels like I was a 4th division footballer that then gets to hang out with the Premiership.
You say that, you're very generous. I mean, you've put so much into these collaborations or chefs and making the recipe. We'll make them look good. And it's nice to see.
But that's our job. I didn't even know this industry existed when I was a chef. And, you know, the first time I sort of walked onto a photo shoot and saw that it was someone else doing the food, it was like, it was a very sort of eureka moment. It's like, okay, so they don't just do it there are people behind them. And all of a sudden, that's what I wanted to throw myself into.
And so that inspired you to do what you do?
Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was that. I loved cooking. I mean, I loved being a chef as well, but I didn't quite know where it was going. And it was like, well, if the higher up the ladder you move, the less it's got to do with cooking. It's more to do with management. Yeah. And actually, I really enjoyed cooking. Yeah, I enjoyed cooking.
You enjoyed the recipe.
I love the recipe. I love the bringing together of the food. And I'm very lucky to have got the opportunity.
That's a mighty fine mashed potato.
Thank you.
Look at that. Pomme puree.
So. Yeah, as we said before, you start from the outside.
Start from the edges.
And when this goes in the oven, you put your duck skin in the oven, and as I said, completely make ahead. If you want to be super smug about this, right, you invite people over, you just look like the calmest cook in the world, because it's sort of ready meal territory. It's ready meal territory, because all you're doing is pulling something out of the fridge.
It's ready meal.
No, but I mean you're pulling something out of the fridge and you're putting it in the oven.
I call this clever cooking because it is clever, because you've used something that all the time comes from the actual duck confit.
Yeah.
So then we're putting some cheese on top.
So some extra cheese on top, and then that's going to go in an oven, and we're ready to go.
Barney, this smells absolutely amazing. I think this should be served at the table, don't you?
100%. This is something you put in the middle of the table and let everyone help themselves. Yeah.
I wouldn't help themselves. No. I think we better serve them.
Exactly.
Barney, this just says everything about you. It's sort of English, bit of French, comforting, friendly. I think I'm going to offer you some
crispy duck skin.
Crispy duck skin, just to really finish it off.
All right, you can either sprinkle this over the top or just eat them. I mean, it does add a little bit of texture to...
So you just took the skin off the confit duck?
Yeah.
Put it in the oven?
Yeah.
My God. That's the best canapé I've ever eaten.
I'm always thinking about, if there's a shelf free in the oven.
Yeah.
I'm always in good food mode. Like, what can you do with that shelf?
Oven management.
Yeah.
My God, the duck's so good.
Oh, thank you. Right, that's comfort food.
That really is comfort food. And it's you. So you.
It really is.
I mean, you've written so many recipes.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about the next generation of food writers? I mean, are you thinking... I mean, I would say with good food, you've set up kind of banks and banks of recipes that they all work. They're beautifully written. Do you feel like you're kind of setting a standard for the next generation of food writers?
I think so. I think it's the integrity of the recipes is still there, but there are some incredible people coming through. You know, Esther Clark. So you're seeing a new generation of people, and they're just putting their own spin on recipes. Food evolves. It shouldn't. There shouldn't be like a revolution. Things shouldn't have to change overnight. Just as your podcast proves. Everyone has their own personal opinion on how things should be, or have their own story behind something.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Italian food or French food. You go to two different Italian nonnas and they'll have their way of doing something. And I think it's the same with food writing. It comes from experience. I have this theory that people either come to food from necessity or from inspiration. So you either grew up with amazing food, like I did, or you grew up with food that was so bad that you had to cook for yourself.
Yeah, straight true.
And either way, you have experience and you have things that you can bring to recipes.
The chore of cooking sometimes can be a bit much, but I think, you know, having recipes that you can sort of look at and you know they're going to work kind of makes the whole thing that much easier. And a recipe like this, actually, it's not that difficult to make. I mean, you know, you're buying the duck confit, taking the skin, using everything. You've got a lovely mashed potato on top. It's absolutely delicious.
Thank you very much.
Now, it feels a bit strange to me to say your debut cookbook, because you've written so many recipes. Yeah. It's beautifully written. The recipe's on page 66, by the way. I know.
Page 66.
I've checked it out already.
Cottage pies.
I'm gonna look at the cottage pies. Having tasted this, I think this book is going to be absolute huge seller.
Thank you very much.
And I just love the idea of one recipe doing it 4 ways. Can you explain that? How does that work? I mean,
so there's seasonal variations. Yeah. So prime example being a risotto.
Yeah.
So we've got asparagus, we've got mushroom, we've got a pea, I need to remember what the last one is. Oh, and there's a squash risotto as well. So different seasons, crumble or tiramisu, for example. We've got one. Sometimes it's not just about the ingredients; it might just be about something that evokes a season. Okay. So I've got a chocolate and hazelnut tiramisu. I've got a classic tiramisu. I've got
a chocolate orange brownie. I saw
like a Terry's
chocolate orange brownie with the chocolate orange slices.
With the segments in there.
I saw that. That looked really good. Yeah, I am partial to chocolate orange.
So brownies, brownies. We've done raspberry cheesecake brownies in summer. We've done a rose brownie, so it tastes a bit like Turkish delight for spring because roses come out in spring, and a peanut butter brownie I put that one down for autumn because for me it was like when kids go back to school, so it's sort of treat you can make with your kids. Yeah, peanut butter cup brownie.
Amazing. I mean, every recipe sounds like a treat. Now, we've got a question from one of our listeners.
Yes.
And it's from Planky1982. What is your favourite meal of all time from around the world?
What's the best meal I've ever had? That's quite...
It's a tough one. I mean,
it is. Yeah. I think the thing... When you're thinking about the X factor of a meal, the thing that makes that X factor tends to be location. Yeah. So it's where you ate something, and that adds just something you can't. You can't.
Very true.
You know, you can be in a fantastic restaurant in the middle of a busy city with starched linen, and however good that is, if you take that dish and you give it a sense of place, then that is the X factor. So I think my wife was pregnant with my first child. We were in Liguria. We got a boat to a little beach. And the beach hut was doing lobster spaghetti, and you had to get there by boat to get there. And he had little bits. I can't remember if it was like if it was some sort of spicy. There was a meat element to it as well. He'd put something in there, some spicy salami in it as well. Wow. So it's like it was a bit surf and turf. But the sea was literally, we were barefoot. The sea was literally lapping against our feet. I was super happy because I was expecting my first child, and it was lobster spaghetti of dreams. Yeah,
that sounds amazing. But it's true. It's about the place. It's it's like you have a tomato, like caprese salad or somewhere or something, and it can be the tomato is it just tastes so much better than it does being anywhere else.
Yeah.
So Barney, one thing I'd say is you are, as I mentioned earlier on, you are the master baker, and. Look at this. I mean, you made this earlier today.
I did. I started these yesterday because they're sourdoughs, and I baked them earlier today, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, you really are.
Thank you very much. But I think, to me, a meal without bread is like a day without sunshine. I think you need bread. To me is essential. It's the essential side dish. I just think there's a lot of symbolism when it comes to bread, but it is I can't eat without bread.
Your bread recipes in there?
There's a focaccia chapter.
Okay.
Yeah.
All about focaccia.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Barney, it's been a real pleasure to see you, and thank you so much for coming on the recipe.
Thank you so much for having me, Sid.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Recipe with me, Theo Randall. You can find Barney's full duck Parmentier recipe on the Filippo Berro website at filippoberro.co.uk/Theo, where you can also submit a question for one of our future chefs. Don't forget to subscribe, follow and share the podcast wherever you listen. Until then, happy cooking.